Recording. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaskar, and thank you everybody for joining in today to this satsang. So today we will take up a topic which is very relevant to all of us in today's times when we find it, difficult to be in a good environment. So how can we do that, or what should be our effort to create a positive environment around us? There is this story, and by listening to the story, we will try and derive some, good thoughts for us to adopt in our life. So the story is told of a person called Mudgala. Now, this Mudgala was a very bad person. So, because he had accumulated a lot of papa, lot of sins from all his bad acts. So, after his death, he reached naraka. Now, normally when some individual reaches to naraka, then it is said that they will have a lot of torture there, a lot of trouble there, isn't it? There are a lot of vivid descriptions, graphic descriptions which are given of how they, for some papas, the punishment is to put them into boiling cauldrons of oil, and in some others they will burn, or they will tie them, or the Yamadutas will be hitting them with chains, and all such kinds of things are mentioned in many different Puranas. So anyway, it is expected that when somebody reaches naraka, they are only going to have some kind of a punishment. Something bad will happen to them. However, when this Mudgala, he reached to naraka, he found that Yamaraja himself, the Lord of Dharma, Yamaraja himself comes to receive Mudgala and gives him all honors, and with lot of respect, he is welcomed into naraka. Now he's surprised. So Mudgala says that, what is this? Why have you given me this honor? And so on. So when Mudgala asks him that, why did you give me this special honor? Why have you done all this to me? Why I am not treated like the ordinary other people in Naraka? So Yama tells him that no doubt you have done a lot of bad things, and you have to you have to, experience all those negative things. But at one point of time, once in your lifetime, you did Godana. That is, you gave away a cow. So that is by itself a punya karma. And when you did that Godana, when you gifted that cow to that Brahmana, you said the words Krishnaya Namaha. So there is so much power in this word Krishnaya Namaha that it has fetched you all this honor instead of the punishment that is given to people who come to Naraka. Now Mudgala and Yama are having this conversation that is heard by all the other people who are inside Naraka. And they realize that yes, there is so much power in Krishna's name. So they start chanting the name of the Lord. They start chanting Sri Krishnaya Namaha, Sri Krishnaya Namaha. They will start chanting. And it is said that as soon as they began chanting, there was no longer anything called Naraka in that place. All the weapons which were being used to torture these people in Naraka, they all became blunt, and they were no longer able to inflict any punishment on them. The burning fire which was there got extinguished. Not only the bad things stopped, but all good things started happening. There was a cool breeze. There was a lot of good fragrance that was wafting around that place. And soothing music began to be played. In other words, it was as if Naraka had turned completely into swarga. So such is the power of Krishna Nama. So much power is there in the Lord's name. We have heard so many stories which are told about how there is so much power in the Lord's name, isn't it? We know the story of how the stones floated when the Vanaras threw it into the Samudra at the time of building the Setu to Lanka. How to build the bridge? The stones were being thrown into the water. And every monkey, every Vanara, when he was throwing that stone into the water, he kept chanting, saying, Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Ram. And the power of that Nama, Rama Nama, is so much that those stones were floating on the surface of the ocean. Rama himself went and tried to throw the stone, and it sank. So then Rama asked Hanuman. Hanuman was observing all this. So Rama asked Hanuman, but what is this? You are all throwing the stones, it is floating. You have written Ram on those stones. You are chanting my name and you are throwing those stones. They are floating. That name of mine, if you say it is powerful, then I am only throwing the stone, but it is sinking. Why? He asks. So Hanuman very humbly he says, Oh Lord, you may be the Lord, but this just goes to show that your Nama is even more Sreshta, it is even more superior to your Rupa. So the name of the Lord, we may or may not be able to see the Lord. Definitely none of us have seen God anywhere, but his name is always with us. And in fact, Hanuman adds another point there, and he says this also signifies another thing, that if you let go of something, how can that ever float? How will that ever come up? We need your grace. You have to hold on to the stone, then it will, be uplifted. But if you have let go of that stone, naturally it is going to sink only. So we need God to be on our side. We need God to hold on to us. And we must remember that the power of the God's name is so much. There are numerous stories which are told telling us about the power of God's name. Again, we know the story of how we know Valmiki was the great Rishi who composed the Ramayana. Now, this Valmiki Rishi was initially a dacoit by the name of Ratnakara. He was such an evil person. He was so bad he couldn't even chant Rama. He could just, when Narada told him that you chant this name, he kept saying Mara, Mara in Ulta. Of course, it translated into Rama. And with the power of that name of Lord Rama, he turned into the Rishi Valmiki who composed the great Ramayana. So, like this, there are numerous examples which are told, which tell us about how we can keep chanting God's name. Now, in this story which we have seen today of Mudgala, it tells us about how even a place which is as bad as Naraka, a hellish place, can be converted into a very good and sattvic environment. So, what we can learn from this story that we have talked about today? In any environment, the vibrations which are there, the vibes that we catch, they are because of the sattva, raja, and the tama components which are present. So, if we want to have good vibrations, positive vibrations in any place, then it is important that we should increase the positive component, which is the sattva guna, and we must try and reduce the tamasic and rajasic components, which lead to a negative environment. So, one of the first things that we can do to make sure the vibrations are positive is to keep the place clean. It is said that cleanliness is next to godliness, isn't it? So, wherever there is shuddhi, in every sense, in the physical sense as well as in the mental sense. So, that shuddhi is preparing to bring God to that place. Now, many times we keep the place clean physically, but mentally we have populated that place with all our negative thoughts. Then is that shuddhi in the real sense? It is not. So we must ensure not just physical cleanliness, but also mental cleanliness. People spend a lot of money and effort and time in trying to, arrange the interiors of the house, in trying to get good furniture. They want the perfect paint. They want to keep plants inside. When people follow Vastu Shastra, they follow guidelines of something like Feng Shui and all that. And they think that by doing all this, we are creating a good space. Now, we must remember that ultimately, whether that space is positive or not, whether it is good or not, does not depend on the objects which are kept there. But it depends on, as we already said, increasing the Sattva Guna and reducing the Rajasic and Tamasic components. If I have a big, huge, what is that big screen plasma TV, and on that I'm only playing some news show which is giving out negative information day in and day out, or I keep watching the serials, or I keep watching some other kind of a television show where all the emotions which are there are only of a negative type, then there is no way that I'm going to increase the positive vibrations in my house, isn't it? People in the house talking bad language to each other, using bad words, shouting, fighting, quarreling, all these increase the Rajasic and Tamasic components. And on the other hand, if we want to create the Sattvic atmosphere, then we know that the Parama Sattvic object in this world is the Lord's name. So we must keep chanting the Lord's name, and that is optimum for creating a Sattvic Vatavarana. People who live in a particular space must think positive thoughts and they must behave in a kind way to each other. Unfortunately, nowadays this idea of being kind has taken a backseat. We are now moving towards that westernized kind of individualistic mentality where I, me, myself, my life, my rules. So I will do whatever I want. Who's the other person to tell me? If we have that kind of an attitude, then we forget to be kind to each other. Often we are very kind to people outside us, outside our house, outside our immediate circle. We will say sorry, thank you, and all pleasing language we use while talking to all of them. But to people in our own house, we may be rude and we may be talking in a negative way. We are not very nice to them. Unpleasantly, we talk. We say harsh things. Our tone is very loud. In other words, we create an unpleasant atmosphere by our behavior. So, the best way to keep positive vibrations in a place is to behave in a positive manner. Now, to say that to behave in a positive manner, it is very easy to say that, but to actually practice in reality, it will take a lot of effort. And one of the ways to do it in an easy way is to increase our own sattvikata, to increase our own positivity. And that will come when we stay in constant company of the Lord's name. By repeated namasmarane, by repeated chanting of the Lord's name, by constantly remembering the Lord, we can create a sattvic environment in our house, in our space, wherever we may be. If we can chant loudly, well and good. If not, in our mind, we must keep chanting. Nowadays, there are these chanting machines which are available. It keeps repeating that same chant. Like there are some where there is only one chant. There are some machines where you get to choose whichever chant you want. So choose one chant, play it in your house, keep it in the puja room or keep it somewhere in a low volume. Let it go on playing throughout the day. And you can observe and see after a few days, you will find that there is some change in the atmosphere in your house. But again, as I said, that machine playing the chanting is one part of it. To really get positive and good vibrations in a space, we need to change, and that change in us will also happen only when we keep chanting God's name. Just as I mentioned the example of Valmiki Rishi. If such a bad person like that dacoit called Ratnakar could change into a Rishi, then definitely we have hope. We also can change by constantly chanting God's name. There are different reasons why chanting God's name will change us. First thing is, as we pay more and more attention to chanting God's name, we are not paying attention or we learn to disregard the impulses which come to our mind from the other samskaras which are there in our subconscious mind from many janmas before. So as we learn to disregard all those impulses and we focus more on God's name, then our positivity increases, our sattvikata increases. Secondly, when we are constantly contemplating on God, God is full of all the divine powers, isn't it? He has all the gunas in him. So as we contemplate more and more on the Lord, then we start imbibing without our knowledge. We start imbibing those positive qualities of the Lord into our own self. And that will bring about a transformation. Of course, it is not easy. It is not that today I start chanting, tomorrow I will change. It will take a lot of effort. It will take a lot of time. And it will take a lot of watchfulness over ourselves. Because it is not enough for me to say that, yes, yes, I will keep chanting the God's name and let God do the magic. I have to also put in effort. Not only should I keep chanting God's name, but I must be watchful over my own thoughts. I must be watchful of my own behavior. I must try and behave in a manner that befits a sadhaka. So when I do all these things together, then definitely it will help to create positive vibrations in a place. Vastu is not just about which corner what is kept, whether you have kept your gas stove here, you have kept your door here, your bathroom there. No doubt that is a shastra, and there is a lot of value to that. But the power of God's name will overrule any other kind of dosha that will be there. He will take care of us. He will protect us if we surrender ourselves to Him. So that is what we must always remember. So I hope that we will be able to adopt a few of these things. Because today we talked about naraka and the effects of papa pushing somebody to naraka. So I just picked up this shloka for today. Prayaschittan aseshani tapa karmatma kani vai yani tesham aseshanam Krishna anusmaranam param. We may be doing a lot of bad things. We may do a lot of papa. And we have to do prayashchitta for that. We have to atone for those wrong deeds, isn't it? If we don't atone for it here, we will be forced to do it at some other point of time. Out of all these prayashchittas that we can do, there may be different types of tapas which are there. There may be different types of methods that we can follow. But out of all of those, the best prayashchitta, the best form of atonement is to think of Krishna, to remember Krishna with a mind which is full of, paschatapa, with a mind which is full of remorse that I have violated his words. So I have done something wrong. Oh Lord, you forgive me. That should be our bhava when we are doing, when we think that we have done wrong, when we realize that we have done wrong. Then how we atone for that wrong is by thinking of Lord with remorse and begging Him that please forgive me and give me better sense, give me the ability to not repeat these mistakes. So now we will go over to the bhajan. I think Usha, you are there. Usha will be singing. I didn't know what Usha would be singing, so I put up one thing into my slide. But I will stop sharing my slide, and Usha can share hers, and she can sing there.
Akka, I think you have to enable screen sharing for the participants.
Okay. How do I do that? Make host madla.
Huh.
Okay, I have done it.
Okay. You're able to see my screen, Akka?
Yeah. Yeah, we can see.
I thought of singing this bhajan because you spoke about the significance of Rama and Krishna's name. And this is a composition by Sri Vijaya Dasaru. Rama Rama Yamberadakshara Premadi Salahito Sujanara Rama Rama Yamberadakshara Premadi Salahito Sujanara Hala Halavanu Panava Madida Hala Halavanu Panava Madida Palalochanane Ballavanu Alapisutta Shiliyagidda Alapisutta Shiliyagidda Bale Halyeya Kelenu Bale Halyeya Kelenu Rama Rama Yamberadakshara Premadi Salahito Sujanara ಅಂಜಿಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಗಿರಿ ಸಾರಿದ ಕಪಿ, ಅಂಜಿಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಗಿರಿ ಸಾರಿದ ಕಪಿ, ಕುಂಜರ ರವಿಸೂತ ಬಲ್ಲವನು. ಎಂಜಲ ಫಲಗಳ ಹರಿಗರ್ಪಿಸಿದ, ಎಂಜಲ ಫಲಗಳ ಹರಿಗರ್ಪಿಸಿದ, ಕುಂಜಲೋಚನೆಯ ಕೇಳೇನು, ಕಂಜಲೋಚನೆಯ ಕೇಳೇನು. ರಾಮ ರಾಮ ಎಂಬೆರಡಕ್ಷರ, ಪ್ರೇಮದಿ ಸಲಹಿತೋ ಸುಜನರನು. ಕಾಲವನರಿತು ಸೇವೆಯ ಮಾಡಿದ, ಕಾಲವನರಿತು ಸೇವೆಯ ಮಾಡಿದ ಲೋಲ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಣನೇ ಬಲ್ಲವನು. ವ್ಯಾಳ ಶಯನ ಶ್ರೀ ವಿಜಯ ವಿಠಲನ, ವ್ಯಾಳ ಶಯನ ಶ್ರೀ
Usha, we can't hear you.